Hola, mi amigos, and welcome to the Sir Gladiator Show. On this edition of the Sir Gladiator Show, I'd like to do a review of the game The Last of Us, the DLC entitled Left Behind. This was a game for the PlayStation 3. The main game itself won a number of Game of the Year awards, I believe, last year. It was quite popular, successful, and a great game in many ways. And this is the one and only storyline DLC for the game. A bit of background for those of you who maybe played the game, but it's been a while, or maybe you didn't play it at all. The game features the main character in the main game is an older fellow named Joel, and through the course of the game, not too long into the game, he finds a young girl named Ellie who he has to help. They end up like crossing the country, I guess, from just about from one side of the country to the other, right? Because don't they end up maybe in Utah? I forget exactly, but they go quite a far ways across the country in search of a cure for because here's the thing, the game the game is sort of set in like a post-apocalyptic type setting, with a lot of zombies and things. And anyways, they're sort of everywhere, and they're looking for a cure, and Ellie has within herself the potential means for a cure because she cannot she can't become a zombie. Her body is immune to the zombie virus, whatever you would call it, because she was bitten and she didn't become a zombie like just about everybody else does. So anyway, that was the point of the main game, her seeking a cure, and what do you know, it didn't happen. But if that's a spoiler, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise anyway. So hopefully it really isn't one. But anyway, in this, the DLC entitled Left Behind, Ellie is not the sidekick, she is the main character. And in fact, she actually is in sort of two storylines at once. You have one storyline which is the main point of the DLC, which is sort of a flashback to before the main events of the main game, before she met Joel and went across the country and whatnot. And there's also a part of the game that is set in the more recent. It is sort of set during the events, the major events of the main game, when they're in the process of crossing the country, and it's where right after Joel had been nearly killed, by the bad guys, and she's trying to find the medicine and stuff to save him, and of course she does. She's successful at that, and this is in part of the DLC is set in that time, showing her going and looking for medicine and stuff and finding it to help Joel. But that is where the combat, pretty much all the combat is set in that time setting. And as far as the gameplay itself, with the combat, it's you would say it's mostly the same as the main game because it is from the main game. But there is one unique thing I'd like to touch on, and that is sort of a tactical thing, and that is there are times during the course of the DLC where the bad guys are after you, because if you recall, this was sort of an area where there are a lot of bad guys, not zombies, but bad guys, and but there are also zombies there, and this is not something that happened in the main game, but there are ways where you can sort of make a noise or something, do something to attract the zombies' attention to fight not necessarily your character but the bad guys. So you got the bad guys fighting the zombies, and it's like, well, who do you really want to win? You just really want them to kill each other, really. I guess you want one side to kill all of the other, and the other side to kill all but one. So basically, they're only left with, if you leave them with just one, then that's all you have to wipe out yourself. It'd make it a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? So in theory, that's what you want, and it's a cool new feature, and I can see why it wasn't in the main game, because you can only imagine how hard that would be to keep it from either being too hard or too easy. Various battles, because if you can set them upon each other, there's a potential for that to be insanely easy, and if you go too far to prevent that, you could end up being insanely hard. Obviously, it was done very well in the DLC, but I can see how that could be a very tricky thing, and why it wasn't part of the main game. But I do hope that that maybe they could do it for the sequel. Maybe they'll have enough time and testing, and they did very well with the DLC. If they could just keep that basic formula going, and use some more of that in the sequel, if and when it happens. You assume that it would happen because it's an extraordinarily successful game. I would hope to see more of that feature, that sort of tactical feature in the sequel, because it's very cool, very cool. But as for the story, because you don't play these games just for the fighting zombies, right? I mean, that can be fun. This is a fun aspect of the game, but you play it because it's a great story. So that's the case with the main game. It's a fantastic story. And in the case of the DLC, once again, you have a great story. And again, aside from that, the sort of the combat area, which is again related to the part of the main game where Ellie is helping to save Joel's life. The main point of the DLC is not that. It's a new storyline. It's based on what happened, was referenced a bit in the main game, and that of course is Ellie and Riley's relationship. Riley being Ellie's best friend, and as it seemed maybe at the time, but they didn't really go into detail. But it turned out that if you got the feeling that Riley was actually her girlfriend, then this DLC shows that you were correct. Spoiler alert. It's not really a spoiler anymore. But so they were sort of romantically involved, and this was again something that you could gather sort of from the main game, but it certainly was not spelled out. It was not confirmed. It was just sort of something you could potentially gather. As far as you knew, in the main game, the only major character who you could really tell, was a lesbian in the main game was of course Marlene, who isn't mentioned in the DLC, sort of in passing, because Riley, right at the beginning, you find out that she had joined the Fireflies, and if you recall, the Fireflies were, headed by Marlene, and we learn in the main game, or is heavily implied, that Marlene was romantically involved with Ellie's mother before Ellie's mother passed away. We see it's like, what is it, 14, 15, 16, whoever it is. I don't know exactly how old Ellie was during the course of the main game, or particularly at the end there. We see, at the end, Marlene is still talking to Ellie's mother, in these recordings that she's making. She's like, obviously Ellie's mother's not there anymore, but she's still talking to her. She's still thinking about her. I guess she's one of those things where you're always gonna love somebody, even though she's gone, because she died from the zombie virus thing. Not very long after Ellie was born, so that was sad. But Marlene always took care of Ellie. That was her thing. It was she was doing that for Ellie's mother. So she basically, she was the next best thing to a mother, to Ellie, because she was all that Ellie had after her mother passed away, because she never knew her father. I don't think we ever found out who her father was, did we? Well, obviously during the course of the game, Joel basically becomes Ellie's father, much the same way that Marlene becomes her mother. Again, not biologically, but just But over the course of the game, this is sort of the way it works out. But anyway, that's the main game. But back to the DLC. Okay, so Riley has joined the Fireflies, and this is not a good thing for Ellie because she is in a boarding school that does not take kindly to Fireflies. But they sneak out of there in the middle of the night. They don't say exactly what time it is. It kind of seems like it's after midnight, but it's obviously before sunup. So, anyways, at like 3, 4 o'clock, something like that, whatever it is, they sneak out of the place and they go on a date to an abandoned mall. And this was obviously would turn out to be not a good idea. Well, spoiler alert, if it's not really a spoiler because you learn in the main game what happened to Riley and to Ellie for that matter. They both get bitten at the mall, but Ellie is immune, so she doesn't die. She doesn't turn into a zombie and die, So so you know what's going to happen. It's not pleasant, but that's only at the end, and it actually isn't as bad as it sounds because you never actually see, because basically where the game ends, you never actually see Riley, turn into a zombie or die or anything like that. So it doesn't end on a depressing note, but it obviously doesn't end on a particularly good note either. But again, it could be worse. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Although I guess I just did. Let's not keep doing that, right? Let's go more in order. So they're at the mall, and it's a fun time. They do a lot of sort of unique, fun things. At one point, it's kind of like they're at a circus or something instead of a mall because you've got like the little thing with the horses that goes round and round. For some reason, my mind is blanking on what the name of that is, but I've ridden them myself. They're fun, the little horsey thing that plays some music and it goes around. You ride that. You go in the old little the booth where they take their photos. They put their faces in various poses. They have silly and scary, and there's like 4 total. But anyway, it's all good fun. And they have an arcade, but sadly the games in the arcade don't work anymore. They're all broken. But they sort of use their imaginations. They're like Ellie's pretending to be playing this one game. It's all very cool. It's all very well done. It's very cool, and it's sort of course, I mean, it's all set within what is sort of a sad and depressing fact that this is their last date together, But of course, they don't know it at the time. But anyway, but we the fans know because there's really no spoiler there. Because I mean, if you played the main game, you know what's going to happen. But anyway, so the theme of the day is that somehow Riley had gone they had an argument. Riley had been mean to Ellie, and then she disappeared for some number of weeks, and now she shows back up, and now she's trying to make things up to Ellie, trying to apologize and make things right. And we don't really know what the argument was about, or whatever. Because I don't know if there's any way of knowing that. Maybe somebody said something on the internet or something. I don't know. But as far as I know, there's no way of knowing what in the world. There were a lot of unanswered questions about that. And one way or another, this was. Well, she did a real good job of it because this was fun. It was a fun outing. It was as we would find out later, it was not well timed because there were a lot of zombies there, as it turned out. But we didn't find that out till later. I mean, they didn't find it out till later. We knew it was going to happen. We saw it later. But anyway, so at one point, she reveals to Ellie that she has been given an assignment by Marlene, again, who's the head of the Fireflies, that she has to leave the next day and go to another city. I guess to fight for the Fireflies in some other city. And I guess basically she wanted Ellie to talk her out of it, but Ellie couldn't bring herself to do it. And she was angry, that Riley was going to leave again. And of course, I mean, you don't want the person you love to be leaving you like that. Particularly twice in a row they left you. Then she thought that Riley was dead the first time, and now she's going to leave again. It's terrible. So she got upset. But basically, everything got straightened out, and Ellie was finally able to tell Riley, "Don't go." That was sort of one of the major themes of the DLC. Don't go. It was sort of juxtaposed with she wants to stay with Riley, and also the other theme, the other part of the DLC is her trying to save Joel, who was become her father. Basically. So both those things are sort of being juxtaposed back and forth during the course of the DLC. They cut back and forth to each one. And that's sort of the theme. Don't go. So once she finally says don't go, then Riley takes off her firefly pendant that she was wearing. Riley's wearing her firefly pendant around her neck because I guess they all do that. So as soon as Ellie asked her not to go, then she took that off, and that was a signal that yes, she will not go, and that is when Ellie kissed Riley and asked her, "What do we do now?" And basically that's when Riley was about to say, you try to say, like what did she say? Something like, we'll figure it out, but I don't think Marlene. She's gonna say, I don't think Marlene was gonna, be happy. Wasn't going to, agree with the decision for her not to go. But around that time is when the zombies start coming in, so they get interrupted. And of course, again, what happens next. They have to fight off the zombies, and in the process of doing that, they are successful, but they both get bitten. And so what that means to them is that they're both going to die and become zombies. Because that's what happens to everybody. You just assume that. That's what they would assume. We don't assume because we know what the deal is, but they don't know what the deal is. They think they're both going to die and become zombies. We know that Ellie, is immune. And Riley, we know that Ellie believes that Riley, did die, but the DLC leaves off right after they're bitten, and so we never see it, and it leaves it wide open as to whether or not, well, maybe Riley was like Ellie, maybe she too was immune, and Ellie, who apparently is very, as is established at the beginning of the DLC, she is quick to assume that Riley is dead with no evidence of it. Maybe she just assumed, perfectly reasonable assumption, that Riley, died and became a zombie, and from the bite, because we never see it, and so as far as I know, there's no actual evidence that it happened, but we do know from the main game, not the DLC, but just the main game itself, there were a number of other people who were immune. Ellie is not unique in that sense. She's not the only one who was immune. She was the only one who they had found using tests had the ability to potentially provide a vaccine for others. But she was not the only one who was immune. So it's entirely believable, because another thing that we learn, this is during the DLC, is that Marlene did not approve of Riley and Ellie's relationship. Now, obviously, it's not because they're lesbians, because Marlene was one herself. It was not because of that. It's because she believed that Riley got Ellie into trouble. She would get her into trouble. I suppose there's reason for her to believe that. Again, we don't see it, but it seems like it's entirely possible. And so, because that's basically her main goal in life, Marlene's is to protect Ellie, because her mother, died, and she loved Ellie's mother, and so basically protecting Ellie is her main, one of her main goals in life at this point. And she believes that Riley gets her in trouble and is not good for Ellie for that reason. And so it's entirely believable that Marlene could have led Ellie to believe. It wouldn't have been hard to get her to believe that Riley had died, and vice versa. She would have led Riley to believe that Ellie had died. All the while, her other goal in life, of course, is to find that cure. And so you would assume that she would have sent Riley off, out west to the cure place, the place where they're looking for the cure. And then she later would have done that for Ellie, because it's interesting when you think back. Something you made me think back. Remember when they had to use Joel and Tess to smuggle Ellie out of the city? And it's like she said, like she didn't have any people to do it, and she basically made the excuses because the soldiers were sort of cracking down on them, and so she just didn't have any people to spare. But what if all her other people had been sent? Had been sent with Riley, and basically, and maybe that had happened before she decided to send Ellie off, to where it's safer and where she can get the tests and whatnot, because it was really not safe in that town for the Fireflies, because they were cracking down, and they had to get out of there. But so that definitely leaves it open, for the possibility, should they choose to go that route, to say that Riley is still alive. But that's obviously something that's I suppose we won't learn for some years to come, however long it takes to do a sequel, if we find out even then. But that's just speculation. But as for the game itself, the storyline is very well done, extremely compelling. It's fun. It's moving. It's really got it all. The DLC is fantastic. The only downside to the DLC is the same downside to the main game, and it's a similar downside to what you get when you play the multiplayer. It's a very similar theme, and that is just the language that is used in the game is just terrible. I mean, the foul language, the profanity, is horrible. I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to ruin in any way such an awesome story with such horrific language, but they do that. And again, when you play the multiplayer, the language tends to be even worse, because people use horrible language these days. A lot of people do, and it's a shame. It's sort of it's a sign of the times, as they say. It's just the culture is breaking down. I mean, decency. I mean, speaking. People can't even speak without using four-letter words. I mean, what is wrong with people? It's horrible. And I mean, again, there's nothing unique to the DLC about that. It was a problem in the main game. It's a problem in the DLC. It's a shame, because it detracts from what is otherwise nothing but awesomeness. With the gameplay itself is fantastic. The storylines are generally fantastic. The DLC storyline is absolutely fantastic, and the main game is mostly fantastic. I could have done without a few things like Tess passing away. But I understand that's part of the story, It did advance the story and whatnot. But of course, the original storyline was did not involve Tess passing away. But that's about the main game, and I do want to stick to the DLC. But again, the storylines are great, and and they really shouldn't take away from it with the bad language like they do. I don't know what causes people to do things like that, to write things like that, and but they do. But aside from that, I have absolutely nothing but positive to say about the DLC. It's great. The gameplay is great. The combat is great. Again, with the unique aspect of being able to pit the two bad guy factions against each other, the zombies and the regular bad guys, bad humans. You can pit them against each other. So that's very cool. Storyline is top notch. Top the line, fantastic. And it even leaves things wide open for you to believe that things went better than Ellie was led to believe. So everything is good. It's as good or better, really better than you could reasonably expect it to be. It was fantastic, a lot of fun, and if you played the main game, and you didn't have and you could stomach the bad language in the main game, you get more of the same in the DLC. So aside from that, I got nothing but recommendation. 2 thumbs up, way up. Again, with that major caveat. So I would say with that caveat, you definitely want to play the game. And if you play it, you will thoroughly enjoy it. Every aspect of the game, again, except for the bad language, will be tremendously enjoyable. The game the DLC is tremendous fun, and again, it was better than my expectations, better than I would have even hoped for. I mean, you can always hope for more, but I mean, one could reasonably hope for, because really the setting, while it was fun in its way, it was always going to be a certain morbidness, in the background, because you think what happened, and this sort of does at least leave open the possibility that maybe what you thought happened didn't really happen, and so in that sense it's even better than you could reasonably have hoped. And so this was a lot of fun, and I think that you will agree that it's a lot of fun if you play it as well. And so, until next time, this has been your friend and mine, Sir Gladiator. This has been the Sir Gladiator Show, and your friend and mine wants to wish you to please tune in next time, and in the meantime, have a great day.